On today's Locked On Cavs, it's the end of an era, and it's not because JB Bickerstaff has been fired, but instead, it's Chris Manning's last dance. We'll talk about what is next for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and also Chris will share what he's doing next on today's Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Cavs, your daily look into the Cleveland Cavaliers and the number one Cleveland Cavaliers podcast, at least in my opinion. But on today's show, my soon-to-be retired co-host Chris Manning will be going out to pasture after this episode, and he and I are going to be looking ahead for what's next to the Cavs. We're going to talk about just, a broad stroke of what the Cavs kind of needs are heading into the offseason, especially with how limited they are. And we'll talk about that and more. But before we dive into that, I want to let you know that LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates and that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And this is going to be the no-duh obvious take, but the biggest offseason priority is getting Donovan Mitchell to re-sign, correct? Like, coaching aside, what they do in free agency with their limited options, the draft, I guess, if you want to talk about that, it's if Mitchell doesn't re-up, that's the domino falling in a different direction, but you want him to re-sign because it's clear that the Cavs have been gearing up for this moment, and the reporting is that the Cavs feel very comfortable gearing up to this moment, but like that's got to be the main focus, right, Chris?
I mean, I think it's in conjunction. I think like those two things are kind of related. It has to be get Mitchell to resign and keep the best player you have by a wide margin and nail the coaching hire. Because that's not, if you have a coach who's not going to help you get better and make your team better, then it's like, what are you doing here? You can't get in going into next year feeling like you have a coach who you're going to be spinning wheels with. That's if you end up in the same place, and that's what it feels like. And you don't feel like the roster is evolved on top. Like, all of this kind of comes together. Like, Mitchell is like the number one thing. It is like the top priority. It is like the main course. But all of the side dishes, all of the sauces, like all of that stuff is going to matter in the overall meal of this offseason.
It kind of makes me think of that like meme of the guy pushing the really little domino, and eventually it's going to knock over the biggest domino. And I think Mitchell's the biggest domino, but the Cavs have to keep building the foundation that they are clear that this is going to make Donovan Mitchell not regret re-signing with us, and also just not make him demand a trade within a year or two into his extension, because no matter how much money he signs for with Cleveland, and the way the NBA works, if a player wants out, they will find a way out. It doesn't matter how much money they're making. If a superstar becomes available, a team will find a way to move heaven to get them, and Mitchell's no exception to that. But I agree. I think it's in conjunction with, frankly, everything. I think he is the center of this off season where like everything is just threads branching out from there. So let's say he re-ups. We talked about the Darius Garland trade hypotheticals. Like, do the Cavs honor that, or do they have to maybe, like you said, find a third team to get involved, to actually get like legitimate return on a guy that the Cavs believe and whoever trading for him believes is a all-star caliber point guard? Or do the Cavs not cave to that and find a way to maybe walk this back? But hire is a big thing too, and I do just have to wonder, like, once Mitchell agrees, do we see the Cavs become hyper aggressive, or do we see them kind of be patient and pragmatic like they have been in the past? And also, even with how they handled like relieving JB Bickerstaff of his duties, like they took a week to make this decision, and which I guess I respect. Like, it's not a heat of the moment kind of thing. Like, you're being rational in your evaluation if you want to look at it through that lens. But it does make me wonder, like, are the Cavs just going to gear up and can become hyper aggressive just to kind of keep building around Mitchell, because, this is the most important superstar to sign an extension with you since LeBron James did, almost a decade ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're recording this the day before Kobe Altman speaks to the media, like, what he has to say. I'm just going to say a phrase Evan has heard me say a lot the last, 2 months, not my problem. I'm curious to see what kind of Tony strikes. I am curious to see what the market dictates and what Mitchell dictates, like how this all unfolds. And I think this could come really fast. I think between the draft, I think between the start of free agency, I think like that stretch of late June into early July is going to be a really interesting period into summer league. Perhaps I think that run for the Cavs of how stuff develops and how stuff doesn't develop and what does not happen is going to define the summer in a lot of ways. I kind of think like that's where we're going to know where this is going. Like maybe this does stretch out, but it just feels like this summer is going to get defined in that window, and that's when a lot of the activity in the league is going to pop off more than not. Mitchell in particular is eligible to sign pretty early. It's not like you're going to wait on him and are going to make moves with. I think it's all going to go right in there as opposed to not. So I think it's all about that stretch there, and I personally would expect more aggression. I think you're going to see. I think this is a summer of change. I don't know, like if it's a 10 out of 10, if it can be a 10 out of 10 on the change scale, but I think it's gonna feel a little different in Cleveland next year. It starts with the head coach, obviously, in the front office, will be intact. It seems like, but I think the roster is gonna feel different. I think the play style is gonna be different. I don't think you're gonna be tuning into Cavs games next year thinking this is the same team I've been watching the last couple of years. Like that team that you saw kind of grow up and get to where it got. I don't think that exact team's gonna exist anymore when you get to the fall.
Yeah, I think this is the summer of they're ready to leave the nest, and Donovan Mitchell being the best player on this team is kind of pushing them out of that nest and kind of making them become comfortable with being uncomfortable and just this situation entirely. But I agree, like it's stylistically speaking, it's going to be different just because you have a different coach running things on either side of the ball, and JB Bickerstaff's been coaching for almost 5 seasons at this point for Cleveland. So yeah, there's going to be a little bit of variance and difference there, but more than that, I am curious, like in terms of, like I agree, like I don't think it's going to be a 10. Like you're not going to see the Cavs completely revamp and reshape their roster in a single day. Like the moment Donovan Mitchell signs an extension, you're not going to see just like, I don't know, Woj firebombing the internet, just like with constant Cleveland Cavaliers updates about like they've done this, they've done that, they've done this. Although they did handle last offseason like that, where they got their offseason done in like a day or a half or two, and then like the Tristan Thompson and Damian Jones stuff trickled in after summer league and everything. But it will be interesting to see, just because they are somewhat limited asset wise. They don't have the picks to make the trades, to make those tough decisions with Allen and Garland. We talked about that earlier this week. They do have I want to say hefty, but a bigger mid-level exception than they did last year to play with. And then they do have a first-round pick this year, which I'm in the camp of they should draft a player that could become a rotation piece for them. But I am curious to see like how high this aggressiveness goes, and do they navigate it, just because they are in a bit of an awkward spot, just because, yeah, you get a superstar to re-up, but you're still asset poor, and you got to really be dynamic instead of static, and I wonder how dynamic they can be with the present limitations in front of them.
I think it's going to feel whatever it is. I think if Darius Garland and Jared Allen, let's say, are not on the team anymore, I think that's going to feel a certain way. Like I have a photo in my living room framed of the Slam cover of Garland and Mobley and Allen in the jerseys from the All-Star year in my living room framed. 2 of the 3 guys on that team, which is just a couple of years ago at this point. Those guys might not be in the team. That's going to feel weird. That felt like the start of something, and that could be over the summer. That's going to feel like the end of an era, even if, like, what did the era actually mean when, like, you didn't get anywhere on your own, and then you didn't get beyond the second round and whatever. But, like, it's going to feel like the end of something if and when that happens. So I would take that into consideration, too, for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think it's just something to take into consideration too. Like I have actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I have it framed. It's on my office, next to Martin Rickman's cover story for Dime, on Darius Garland. Like, yeah, it is a bit of a encapsulation of an end of an era, and just it is interesting to see what the next steps are. Just because like there is something unique with how the Cavs did navigate this rebuild. Like a lot of it was built the ground up. Like they ripped it down to the roots and built it completely back up. And, trading for Allen is, the only outlier in that. But it's an interesting situation just because, yeah, like player-wise and personnel-wise, it's going to be different next year, because 2/3 of the guy on that Slam cover may no longer be with this team next year. And I think that'll just be an interesting dynamic to keep an eye on, to keep tabs on. And I also do wonder like how aggressive our opposing team's going to be when it comes to like acquiring Allen and Garland. And I want to touch on Allen actually again, just because like there's just been more stuff that's matriculated into the ether after you and I last talked about him on Tuesday. So we'll touch on that in a bit. But you know the rules. We got to pay the bills, and we'll be right back. Today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are right for the role, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the tool to help you find the professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of over 1 billion professionals, making it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else, and LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Is easy when you have that many quality candidates, and it's so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. So if you're interested, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. As always, terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to Locked On Cavs, your number one podcast covering all things Cleveland Cavaliers. And while you're getting your fill on us, I got to ask, tired of watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down that volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel that is programmed for you every day to bring the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network team every day. So hopping back into this talk, it's becoming more and more clear that I think like whether it's Windhorse who's been talking about it on ESPN Cleveland quite a bit, or Mark Stein just like leaking stuff into the ether quietly via Substack, and just everything else. But it's becoming pretty clear. Like I think there's going to be a pretty robust market for Jared Allen, and I wonder if he's either like a guy the Cavs try to move on at draft night. Maybe they involve that first round rookie they picked, either move up or move back depending on who they select. And I am curious to see what the Cavs get in return for it, because in this postseason, like sure, last offseason, getting Max Strus and George Niang and Ty Jerome for a game and a half, is in theory on paper the step in the right direction towards just adding shooting to this roster across the Rubicon. But it's clear the Cavs need more of it. And if you're trading Allen and you're trading Garland, you obviously want to kind of get some similar size in return, just to kind of make it plug and play more malleable for you. But there has to be just a predication on shooting, just because it's just where the Cavs are most successful during the season, and in the playoffs, like if a shooter goes cold, you need other options that you can tap in.
I think one of the things of the summer that I'm really curious about is the returns as far as Allen, and I think Garland too, about what they yield player-wise / like asset-wise. Because like a lot of these trades in the last couple of years have been, when you make a trade like this, it is asset-based. It is not, it is about like the picks you're getting, right? Like it is 2 firsts or a first and some seconds, or like one interesting young player, and it's like a future bet. Are the Cavs in a position to take like future bets on stuff? I think to some degree they always kind of have to be. This is a mid-market team. This isn't a team that can bank on, like, frankly, Mitchell being around forever even if he extends, or like anyone wanting to come here. Like, you kind of have to be in the player development mode all the time. But are these deals going to skew more player heavy? And then, like, how do you balance that with actually the teams that want the players you have to trade? So, like, if it's Jared Allen, how do you balance getting more win-now pieces that fit what you want to do with your new head coach with the trades that are available? Like, that is a really interesting line for them to walk with a Jared Allen trade, with a Darius Garland trade. Like, there was a thing out there on Thursday about like the Lakers, for instance, as like a Garland thing. I know we're talking about Allen, but like it was like Rui and like Reeves. Like if it's like Kenny Atkinson's head coach, that trade makes a ton of sense for like a Kenny Atkinson. Like Reeves is like a pretty perfect Atkinson guy. Rui is like kind of a bigger four, like kind of an imperfect guy. Never has hit the highs that he hit during that playoff run again, and is whatever. But like that makes sense to me, and like as a practical way, like you're gonna have to find trades that feel more practical than like, oh, we got 2 firsts back. Like
Yeah.
And that carries some risk though. Like those aren't always deals that work. The Cavs tried to. I mean, it's in retrospect, obviously, and like we kind of knew some things at the time. I don't think anyone was thrilled about that trade, but like they tried to do a more kind of walk that line kind of thing Kobe Altman did in 2018 with the Kyrie trade, and like look how that didn't exactly work. And like that, it's a hard line to walk in terms of NBA.
That
trades.
also was a unique situation because LeBron was on the way out the door to LA, but like the Cavs were trying to do everything they could to keep LeBron. And
also
LeBron
probably
kept telling him to trade the draft pick.
Also, probably when Isaiah
no,
Thomas fails his physical, he probably should just like get more than a second or just not do the deal. Just a thought.
Yeah. My thought exercise what if they took the Bucks offer, which I believe was like Brogdon, Middleton, and some draft compensation, because those players would have slotted in very nicely next to LeBron, and also would have been nice, connector pieces to the secondary when LeBron inevitably leaves for that team. But either way, I agree. Like, it's going to have to be practical returns. People may have saw me grimace, curse myself too, but like, you can't like settle for draft picks unless like you're planning on just loading those draft picks into a cannon to make a trade for something else that gets you a more practical return, because this team is improved when they lost to the Knicks, sure, on paper, but like they're still flawed. Like they have a lot of guys that are twos that are playing the three right now. You have a lot of guys that are playing out of position. That's also just like natural how basketball works. But the two bigs thing clearly just isn't tenable going forward. And the problem is like obviously you want to build this offense around Donovan Mitchell, who I believe like you still want to find a point guard to play alongside him, but like use those Mitchell only lineups and like frequently in like bursts to kind of just like momentumly build a lead and also just like rest a guard. But the problem is it's very tricky to find a point guard or like a guard who can handle point responsibilities that's also very comfortable playing off the ball or without the ball in their hands when they have to share the floor with like Donovan. Or like in theory, let's say Karras is back next year, like they should when they share the floor with Karras as well, because like those guys just aren't as comfortable without the ball in their hand. And I think that's going to be a tricky thing to figure out as well. And it'll be interesting to see how they navigate it. Also, like who they draft, selecting the draft could be interesting too. Like, do they consider taking a point guard with the 20th overall pick? Like, I think Jonathan Gavoni had the kid from Pittsburgh. He's like a 6'5" point guard. He's more of a Bogart. He's a scoring slasher, and sometimes showed some playmaking upside. And do the Cavs want to kind of risk and roll it with a rookie playing one of those key positions or in the rotation, not as a starter, but like I think like if you took like a guy who was a junior or a senior, like there's that kid from California, or there's Tristan Da Silva from Colorado who could be on the board too, who's a senior. If like you're able to get a guy like that who's more NBA ready and just kind of more of a finished product, and he's like your 8th or 9th man, it can creep up or flow down in the rotation depending on the matchup or anything like that. Yeah, I think that just makes sense because it's what the Nuggets are trying to do right now with retooling their bench, because they're don't want to end up in like a situation with the Bucks where they're just so long of the tooth and like just not without assets where they really can't make any more, just are strapped financially because of the new apron and everything. Like they can't make the moves to do that. So like it is a fine line to walk. It is very curious, and I am just curious than anything, like what is a practical return in Cleveland's eyes? Just because, like, clearly, like, Jared Allen has a lot of value to the Cavs. Clearly, Darius Garland, when he's healthy, and, this last season is such an aberration. But, like, when Darius Garland is healthy, like, he is very, very important to the Cavs. Like, what is a practical enough return for them where they still feel like they're satisfied in the return? Just because you don't want to settle for some trades either, just because, like, you're thinking, oh, it gets Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura. Like, yes, on paper that makes sense, but can you get a little bit more from the Lakers, or do you have to get creative and get a third team involved? And I think that's something you brought up earlier in the week, is like I think these are going to be a lot of 3-teamers too, where the Cavs maybe like work with some bad teams as well to acquiesce assets that they may get to other teams, just to keep getting and piling on players that can make it more of an immediate impact than, I don't know, like Atlanta's 2025 draft pick, like that can make zero impact for you on the court next season.
Yeah, I think you're going to see some complicated thing, a lot of pieces moving around that you're gonna be like, what? And that you're gonna have to just figure it out.
It's going to be absolute chaos when they say these like 2 players are involved and it doesn't make sense, but they're the biggest names involved, and then like this other pieces start flowing in slowly. But who knows? But it'll be interesting to see. Outside of obviously re-signing Donovan Mitchell, from a skill set standpoint, what do you think is the most important thing the Cavs need to prioritize? I said it was shooting, and you said it was kind of malleable plug-and-play pieces, but like those just like, or returns, I guess I should say, but like in those returns, what should be like a central focus for Cleveland?
I think whatever it is, it's about an identity. Whatever you decide your identity is with Donovan Mitchell, and your new coach, everything you do is about that. Whatever you decide that is, it's about that. And if those things are not aligned, you're making a mistake. I think to me, it's like I don't want to say what that is because we don't know what that is. We haven't seen who they hired yet. We haven't seen what they say they want their vision to be. But like what they do with those moves and how they said they kind of dictate they want to play with those moves. I think to me that's it. All of that has to be in alignment, and it has to be all progressing in that one direct way.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, like you said, the identity thing's going to be interesting. Like you had noted, we're recording before Kobe Altman's end of season media availability. The players will not speak, from what I gathered, so they're all gone and doing their own thing. But Altman will kind of at least set a bit of the tone of what like experience will be for Cleveland going forward. Is it going to be more of the defensive heavy stuff? I would doubt it, just because they have the personnel to be a solid defensive team, but they need more of an injection on offense. But Albin will be the guy who kind of sets the table, and we'll kind of figure it out from there. But one more quick ad break, and we'll be right back to talk more, give our final thoughts on just what's to look ahead for the Cavs, and also just, saying goodbye to a soon-to-be friend of the program. Today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain and level your vehicle up to peak performance. Superchargers and roof racks, exhaust kits and LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you want. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the needed parts at your desired prices, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. And we're back with more Locked On Cavs. I am sitting next to virtually eBay Motors customer Chris Manning, who soups up his Ford Bronco as often as he can. He actually had a Bronco shirt on not too long ago, so it's always just, I'm like, he is a car guy now.
I'm a Bronco guy.
Hey, I am too. So,
Wow.
yeah, it all comes together. But Chris, just looking at this team and how it's constructed, how different would you think will different be heading into next season? Like, dramatically different? Will we see embers of what worked this last season, but on a greater scale and more amplified? It's just really hard to gauge, just because there are a lot of questions I have about this team heading into next year.
I mean, I think it's kind of what we said before, right? I think it's going to feel really different. How different it is maybe open to interpretation, and we have to actually see it first, right? But I think it's going to feel different. I think new coach, new playing style, new energy, new pieces, no Darius Garland perhaps, no Jared Allen perhaps, Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell having to find a new level of chemistry, new role guys, other new players. A lot of this is going to feel and look a little bit different. I think that's where this is headed. And so I think and everyone that knows is more plugged in than me. Zach Lowe is talking about this on his show Thursdays. We're recording this and whatever. I do think that the sense around the league is that this is a summer of change and stuff is going to look different for the Cavs next year. I have no reason to think that that's not where we're heading. So I think this is going to look and feel really different. I think you're going to look back at the summer and say this is a summer where the Cavs pivoted and adjusted and try to do some things differently. We'll see where it goes, but I have no reason to not think that next year's Cavs team is going to look and feel quite different.
And speaking of pivoting and changes coming this summer and the Cavs, I guess, and looking quite different, it's your last show's co-host, man. It's been a heck of a run. How do you feel?
If I'm being honest, I'm excited. This is probably overdue. This has been a long time. I don't want to talk about what has gone on in my life because I don't really think I don't care to talk about it. But
well, people don't need to know.
I just don't
know you personally.
No, I don't, and I don't care to talk about it with anyone other than who I feel like we're talking about it with, is like my therapist and my parents. But uh, this is needed from you. People will be able to find me the Just Basketball show. I'm really excited to keep doing that show with Brendan Clean and Wes Goldberg, but that show's less of a lift. There's just frankly more of a robust support team over there in terms of production and social and all of that. It's a little more manageable. It's a little more just kind of comfortable for me right now. I'm not going to want to be, I don't really get excited about going to the arena. I wrote about this on my Substack the other day, but it's like my life is very different and I need to just go live. So like, I'm not going to be online very much. Like I brick my phone during the day a lot of the times now. So like, I can't look at Instagram or Twitter or anything. I just like I'm just gonna go live. This feels like I probably should have done this a while ago, and it like I'm gonna miss the show at some point. I'm sure. I think I'll get to the fall and wonder like, oh, it'd be cool to talk about X, or the Cavs will do a crazy trade in the summer and I'll be like, oh crap, or whatever. But like I mean, for me, Evan already answered this way. Like my dad, like a week ago, we were talking about this, and he asked me like, if LeBron came back tomorrow, like, would you like want to stay? I'm like, no, and like my answer pretty instinctively was no, and it's like, I just don't. I don't have it in me anymore, and like I don't, and I need to go do stuff that actually excites me. Like, and this has been a great ride. I thank David Locke and for the opportunity, Nick Angstad for all the help as our channel manager, and you for co-hosting with me, and Jake Stevens and all the great co-hosts I've worked with, and other shows like Tony East and Brendan Clean and Brad Rowland and John Corrales, who I had drinks with when he was in town, and Philip Rossman-Reich, and like all these great people. But it's time to go do some different stuff and like be an actual human being and not just like a person just like who just talks about a basketball team and a microphone all the time. Like it's time. I'm excited to see what goes on here and everything, and it's just it feels right. And so like, yeah, is it bittersweet? Sure, but like, is it also like, am I excited more about like getting to just go be like a normal human being? Yeah, like I'm more excited just to like not to work less and like be a human and just like be a normal person who's like life isn't revolving around this. Like that's very exciting to me.
Yeah, I totally get that, and no, I'm excited for you. Excited. I don't know. This is something you and I have been talking about behind the scenes. God, even before the season started and years before this too, just like where you're at capacity-wise and everything, and I'm excited you're finally able to leave on your own terms and you feel at peace with the decision. And I don't know, I'm glad we got to do what we did. Like we had some cool shows. Like I think, the pandemic special with Larry Nance was fun, and Lindsey Gottlieb and JB Bickerstaff coming on to talk to us just about like, women in basketball and Gottlieb's sake, or why players were refusing to play during the bubble after what happened to George Floyd, and like JB Bickerstaff educating the two of us, and just hopefully educating our audience as well, just because it's inauthentic for two white guys to talk about it, and I think it's much better to have a black man who has a very vested interest in the NBA because he coaches in it or coached in it now. But either way, no, it's been a hell of a run for both of us. I remember when you used to approach me about co-hosting, and I joked that I hate the sound of my voice. And I would never host a podcast. And here we are almost 5 years later, and I'm just going to be doing this by myself for a bit. Figuring out the next steps in terms of co-hosting. You're going to see a lot of regular faces. Maybe Chris pops in every now and then too. If I'm drag him back.
Here's the thing. I will guarantee you will. Honestly, I'm just going to tell you this now, Evan. Like you will. I'm out. If you see me again, it's like in a year and a half. Like I'm out. Like I'm going to go like. No, like the wall is up. Like it's time to just like not. Like I'm gonna, read a book and sit outside and enjoy a cocktail. It's gonna be great. It's awesome. And not think about the Cavaliers all the time. Sometimes people will see me at games because I will just like go to a game and you can say what's up still. If you're like, aren't you that like bald weirdo who had a show? I'll be like, yeah, that was me at one point. But you'll probably just like see me doing that. And yeah, but no, the answer is you can catch the only podcast I will be doing 2 podcasts a week at the Just Basketball show. And I will not be doing any other. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm out. I've talked to the microphone like way too much. Is my answer to that.
All right, cool. Well, that'll do it for this week of Locked On Cavs, folks. Check Chris now going forward on the Just Basketball show. I'll be here 5 days a week. I'll be joined by Mac Robinson and Martin Rickman next week to kind of talk about the offseason for the Cavs, JP Bickerstaff, any other moves, news, and things like that. But until next time, I'm Evan. That was Chris Manning, former co-host of Locked On Cavs, and Jake Stevens is gone too. Jake, we tip our cap to you as well, but I'll be back on Monday, folks. See you then.